Absolutely phenomenal news, guys, because the United States gave a green light for the destruction of the Crimean bridge. The head of defense intelligence of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, said something very mysterious, something like, "Civilians, please stay away from the bridge in the near future." At the same time, Ukrainians already presented a step-by-step plan of the deconstruction of this iconic bridge for Putin. At the same time, in the east, Ukrainians are having minor successes, and unfortunately, looks like Putin is preparing for war against NATO. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Belarussian propaganda. Ooh, Lukashenko! So, today, yes, indeed, we are talking about some events from Belarus, specifically this training of so-called, I guess, Belarusian Spetsnaz, most likely being trained by those Wagner ex-convicts. But to be honest, the level of their preparations, the level of their military skills looks like these are just some high schoolers or university students or cadets, just showing off something what they learned in the last couple of days. I am not an expert in this kind of... I don't even know what they are doing, so guys, please let me know down below in the comments. The only thing I do know for sure is that this Belarusian warrior, who is shirtless with his bare chest holding two Belarus flags to the left and to the right of his side, he is the alpha male of the army of Belarus. Prove me wrong. And in my personal understanding, Belarusian propagandists are true equal opponents to the Russian propagandists, so let's see, we might see more of them in the future. And by the way, guys, those of you who are watching my videos as soon as I release them, unfortunately my previous video, as you might have seen, was released 5 to 6 hours later than it should have been, and I apologize for this. The reason for this, there was a global outage for YouTube services. Literally, when I was uploading my video, it was simply not showing anywhere. I was just uploading it to Abyss. It just disappeared. So once again for this I apologize. But in all seriousness, YouTube is becoming pretty unstable platform, definitely for the type of content I am making, which is war related, and such as, for example, last 3 out of 6 of my previous videos got put restrictions on them, even though you guys know I fully censor everything that might be questionable. YouTube still decided to limit half of my previous videos. And I have absolutely no idea what will happen in the future, but honestly I do not think it will get better, and obviously guys, I do not want us to lose each other. So for this reason, please guys, I'm really asking you to go ahead and check my Patreon. This is the place where I was posting non-stop every single day for 2+ years, and this is the place where you can see early access to the Russian Dude episodes, fully uncensored and advertisement free, and Patreon never gave me a headache so far. Hopefully it stays the same. I know about the situation with Artur Rehi, I'm trying to be very careful, but for now Patreon is way more stable than YouTube. And also, I want to give you another big reason to join, because all current and new Patreon members will receive a 10% discount on every single item in our store, therussiandude.com. Yes, it is a multiple use discount code, so you can use it several times. And the way I personally see it, if you decide to buy something such as, for example, this iconic yellow hoodie with this 10% discount, the discount itself will pay for several months of Patreon membership. This is also the best way to support my mission here on YouTube, and this is, to be honest, a win-win solution for both of us. The link to our merch website and Patreon you'll be able to find down below. Once again, YouTube is getting very restrictive and I simply do not want us to lose each other. So guys, thank you so much for your support. And now let's continue. And so yes, now let me give you a couple of quick words about the situation in the east of Ukraine. Then I'm gonna talk about the situation in the south, where Ukrainians are preparing quietly to cross Dnipro river, and also there's a green light to attack the Crimean bridge, and finally Putin versus NATO. So first of all, unfortunately we have to again make a stop in Sumy, where as a result of a Russian attack, a local corn seed storage was destroyed by Russians. But fortunately, Ukrainian air defense was able to intercept the majority of missiles and drones, and such as, for example, right here is the debris of one of Russian missiles. And as you can see from the inside, it was only produced on the January 31st of this year, which means that this month was made only less than 1 month ago and is already being used in Ukraine. What it tells us is that Russians significantly increased the production of military-related items, and they are bringing them pretty quick to the front lines, and this is unfortunately not so good news. But in the meantime, Ukrainians continue to show extraordinary resistance to the Russian attacks, specifically also in the east. Such as, for example, first of all, right here is a video coming to us from Belorussian, where once again an extremely cheap Ukrainian drone was able to fully obliterate and deconstruct a Russian modern T-80 tank. And the interesting thing about this is that this tank had all-around anti-drone protection, which we've been joking in the past, it does not work. Well, right here you can actually see, it does not work. Next, we also need to talk about some very extraordinary events which happened in the east in the last 24 hours, and specifically what I'm talking about is that Ukrainians were able to intercept 2 Russian fighter jets Su-34. Yes, that's correct. In less than 24 hours. But it does not end here. For example, right here is the video from Lysychansk, where 2 more Russian multiple launch rocket systems called Grad were completely obliterated by Ukrainian forces. So long story short, last day for Russians in the east was pretty destructive, to say the least. But it does not end here, because as we go a little bit more to the south to Avdiivka, where Russians try to advance to the west of this settlement, well, Ukrainians are not gonna obviously give up that easy. Specifically right here was this so-called the Road of Life, which Ukrainians previously used to bring back and forth reinforcements to Avdiivka and away from this city. Well, now since the city is under Russian control, Russians started to use it. But Ukrainians already know every single stone, every single turn of this road, and it is within the range for Ukrainian artillery. That is why one of the very first Russian convoys was completely obliterated, as you can see from these pictures. At the same time, it has also been reported that Ukrainians were able to destroy an armored vehicle and an assault group of Russians advancing closer to Stepove, but unfortunately, as we all know, the favorite tactic of Russians, using the mid waves, they still continue to use it until this day, and I don't think they're gonna plan to stop it. But long story short, because of this never-ending pressure by Russians, Ukrainians had to withdraw to more favorable defensive positions, and they had to leave Stepove, located right here. Then they also had to leave Severny, located to the south of Lastachkine, which has also been recently captured by Russians. And by the way, I almost forgot to mention another next city which Russians are pressing so hard against right now is located to the west of Bakhmut, and the city we're talking about is called Chasiv Yar. And right here is the video of Russian attacks against this so far civilian city. Yes, civilians still continue to live there, the city still has some remaining buildings. But unfortunately, if the attacks of Russians continue against Chasiv Yar, I think it awaits the very same destiny as Bakhmut and Avdiivka. That's unfortunate, but this is the way Russians do their warfare. As we go back to Avdiivka frontline, if you guys remember, there's this small settlement called Novomikhailivka, located to the south of Marinka, which is still under Ukrainian control. And so long story short, Russians also press against Novomikhailivka extremely a lot. And recently, also in the last 24 hours, it has been reported that Ukrainians were able to repel at least 15 different assaults of Russians, not letting any single one of them to advance any single meter. And then there's also this so-called Road of Life between Novomikhailivka and Marinka, where Russians are trying to bring their military vehicles, convoys every single day. Well, guess what? This has also been fully destroyed, fully prevented by Ukrainian forces, because as you can see from this picture, every single marking on this photo is a destroyed armored vehicle of the Russian military of different kinds, whether these are tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, armored personal carriers, you name it. And yes, by the way, obviously every single Patreon member, existing or new one, will be able to get this footage completely uncensored also on my Patreon. Guys, drink us down below, thank you so much. And to sum things up, before we can talk about the south, where Ukrainians are now getting a little bit more dominant. So to sum things up, according to the Institute for the Study of War report, in the east, Russians were able to gain the full initiative along pretty much the entire front line. They are trying to advance along Kupiansk-Liman front line in Bakhmut, Avdiivka, all the way down to Novomikhailivka, even some attempts in Vuhledar which are not successful at all. But the fact is the fact. Russians right now are focusing primarily in the east of Ukraine. And so yes, now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the south of Ukraine, where Ukrainians are quietly preparing to cross Dnipro river, and then we're gonna talk about the escalation around Crimean bridge. But in the meantime, guys, while I still can upload videos on YouTube, and hopefully it stays the same, but just in case YouTube puts even more restrictions and you will not be able to discover my videos naturally in your homepage, please just give me a follow, give me a subscribe to my channel, like this video. That's as much I can ask you to help me now also in my battle against YouTube. Guys, thank you so much. And so yes, first of all we have an event which happened recently in Novokakhovka, because this is the place where Russians brought their so-called elections center to force Ukrainians to vote for Putin. And long story short, Ukrainians were able to disrupt this temporarily election base, whatever you can call it, building, by simply destroying it. Then we also have a video from Radyansk, located to the southeast of Oleshki, where Ukrainians using a drone as well were able to destroy a pretty relatively big drone base of Russians. But even more interesting things are happening along the Dnipro river. Right here is the video from Mr. Maluk, the representative of Ukrainian army, who shows that Ukrainians started to remove, let's call it like this, the mines using drones. Because Russians obviously do not want Ukrainians to cross Dnipro river and to actually liberate Kherson region. That is why they had to build these fortifications, because crossing water obstacles is already complicated enough, but with the mines it becomes even more complicated. It's going to be very, very difficult. And this is in addition to Ukrainians still holding the bridgehead, one of the major ones located right here in Crimea, where at this point they gain pretty confident foothold. This is also in addition to never-ending Ukrainian boat raids along the Dnipro river, where they destroy the position of Russians. And we've been talking about these raids in several of my previous videos. And just in general, not that much focus of Russians on defenses of Kherson region, because just like we spoke about 2 minutes ago, right now the main focus of Russians is in the east. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that it is pretty obvious that at this very moment Ukrainians are quietly preparing to cross Dnipro river. You can even see it only has 2 arrows which point the direction of Russian attacks in Kherson region, and then just take a look at the number of red arrows in the east. Once again, the facts speak for themselves. We even have these maps which shows the approximate lines of defenses of Russians around Ukraine and also to the northern border of it, and pretty much it's the same story. The majority of them are located in the east of Ukraine, a very big portion is in Zaporozhye region, and just a few of them, relatively speaking, is in Kherson region. And one last thing from the south before we can talk about the situation in Crimea is actually from Crimea as well. For example, right here is the video from Yevpatoria, where we can see that Russians are bringing even more of their tanks T-62 to the front lines. The good news is that these are T-62 tanks, very old ones. The bad news is that there is more tanks which are going to be fighting in Ukraine. And so yes, now let's focus more on Crimea, because it looks like that America recently green-lighted Ukrainian attacks against the peninsula and specifically against the Crimean bridge. First of all, what I'm referring to is that the Biden administration several weeks ago started to consider sending long-range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine with the range of up to 300 kilometers, which will, as you can see according to this map, allow them to strike any single target on the Crimean Peninsula and even beyond. But wait, there is more, because later, according to the representative of the White House, Mr. John Kirby, in fact, right now US is already working on supplying these long-range ATACMS missiles to Ukraine, which most likely means we will see them being used in Ukraine in the near future. And I mean, yes, obviously one of the priority targets for Ukrainians will be the Crimean Bridge, and they do not even hide this fact. By the way, and also another thing which confirms that the bridge will have very tough times in the near future is that United 24, along with the Security Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, they recently opened a voluntarily, let's call this money collection for, guess what? Naval drones such as Sea Babies, the ones which are responsible for sinking a lot of Russian vessels in the Black Sea area, and the ones which are capable of attacking Crimean Bridge as well. The range of these drones can be something as 1,000 kilometers, which will be way more than enough, obviously, to reach the Crimean Bridge. And to make things look complete, Ukraine even provided us with pretty much a step-by-step guide how exactly they're going to attack the Crimean Bridge. Long story short, one of the main missiles, metallic cylinders, which they will need is from Germany, unfortunately, these Taurus missiles, which Olaf Scholz is still very hesitant to send to Ukraine. But it does not matter, they can still use just in case ATACMS missiles, which America is planning to send them. And these ones will be used to attack the columns which are holding the bridge itself. At the same time, they might use a combination of ATACMS missiles, other metallic cylinders, and then also drones, including naval drones and air drones, to just overload the Russian air defense around the bridge. And then once again, with the combination of ATACMS missiles and naval drones such as Sea Baby, they might do a chaotic, just all at once attack against the bridge, which will leave Russians in complete speechless state of mind, which will not allow them to do anything. They might intercept something, but the target eventually will be accomplished. The mission will be accomplished. And then, guess what? The head of defense intelligence of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, released this video addressing the civilians primarily living on the Crimean Peninsula, saying that, guys, please be careful, do not approach this bridge in the near future, we have some surprises for the Russian army. Then even the chief of the SBU, Vasil Maluk, he also said that Russians might expect many surprises in the Black Sea in this 2024. Obviously, we're not gonna tell you, but guys, prepare, it will be a very hot summer. And even though you might be thinking, well, if Ukraine does not receive those long-range metallic cylinders ATACMS from America, then attacks against Crimean Bridge will not happen. Well, that's not exactly right, because according to the Minister of Strategic Industries of Ukraine, Alexander Kamyshin, Ukrainians themselves are developing metallic cylinders capable of flying 700 kilometers radius. So, I mean, yeah, ATACMS will be a good addition, but they are not gonna be relying heavily on this specific munition. And ultimately, Zelensky himself, in one of his most recent interviews to Fox News channel, he did say that Ukraine has a very detailed step-by-step plan for its counteroffensive in 2024, which will be primarily focused on the southern regions and Black Sea. And guys, by the way, if you think that I'm just revealing some government secrets or anything like this, no, all this is a publicly available information. I am not revealing any secrets or strategies to Russians. If you are watching me, I am just presenting you the information which is available to every single one of you on the internet. So as you can see, the involvement of the West, specifically by NATO countries, is getting a little bit bigger in this war, so obviously Putin does not like it, because if you remember, one of the original goals of starting this so-called special military operation was to prevent NATO from expanding, which so far Putin successfully failed at achieving. So, long story short, what happens right now is that Putin, even though obviously these new regions which Russia captured are not Russian territories, he officially, quote-unquote, recognized them as part of Russian territories, which basically means will allow him to install his military bases, to bring military-related equipment, obviously military vehicles and other defense mechanisms, units, infantry, tanks, infantry fighting wheels, everything. So long story short, according also to some Western military experts, including the above previously mentioned Institute for the Study of War, it does look like that Putin is preparing for a large non-nuclear war against NATO in the near future. It might not happen right now, because Russia is obviously exhausted of this war with Ukraine, but in case Ukraine just accepts whatever it is right now, in case they are forced to talk with Russia, and in case there is some kind of peace agreements, which basically means it will be over for combat activities, with very high degree certainty Putin will use this time to resupply his army, to give them a break, to give them a breather, to just let them rest, and also recruit more people, train them properly and not in rush, because they need to send somebody to the front lines. And then, when Russia is ready once again, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, this is when he can continue with his invasion. Please guys, let me know down below in the comments if anything what I'm just saying right here makes sense to you, and also if you did miss my previous episode, which was uploaded in a very unusual time, and I was talking about the Russian saboteurs threatening to invade Belgorod. The video will appear to my left. Also, please once again go ahead and check Patreon, check our merch on therussiandude.com, very good way to support our work, and just simply subscribe to my channel. I don't want to miss you guys. Thank you so much for your support, thank you so much Patreons, and see you tomorrow.